Perhaps not since the American Civil War was the USA, one of the longest lasting democracies in history, so close to complete political collapse. Over 80% of Americans hold unfavourable views of the opposing political party, a stark indication of the increasing polarisation that echoes the Civil War era. With endless recent examples, like the events of January the 6th,
the attack on our capital and the attempted coup to overturn our democracy,
the scepticism around the election results,
expose the tremendous voter fraud and irregularity,
and the pervasive use of the term
fake news.
50% of the US thinks the other 50% is living in an alternate reality. And in many ways, each side is right. Not literally, of course, but ideologically. We could speculate about why this is. The emergence of less reliable news, social media algorithms, the rise of political extremists. But the truth remains, as it stands today, the US is a breeding ground for civil unrest. Today, some experts warn of a potential Civil War 2.0, and popular culture has picked up on this as well. Take for example the 2024 film Civil War by director Alex Garland, which explores a not so distant future US in the throes of a civil war. The consequences of this coming to fruition, maybe not in this generation, but perhaps in some future one, mean it's time to think about the real ramifications of that potential reality. So, let's look at how the US national divorce might play out. If the US does split into several distinct sovereign nations, based on geography, political leanings, and economic conditions, let's think about what those potential new nations might look like. It's true that all countries have regional differences, but the US is in a class of its own, and the gap between the richest and poorest is one of the largest among developed nations. Incomes in the San Francisco Bay Area are approximately 2.5 times higher than the average incomes in Mississippi. With this in mind, it wouldn't be surprising if some of the richest and most politically progressive states in the USA banded together to form a West Coast Republic, which could consist of present-day California, Oregon, and Washington. They might form a progressive nation focused on technology and environmental policies. California alone currently boasts a GDP of approximately $3.7 trillion, making it the fifth largest economy in the world. The combined GDP of the West Coast states could exceed $4 trillion. Then there is the collective affluence and higher education of the northeastern states, where the median household income is around $82,000, while in the southern states it is around $64,000. Additionally, the Northeast has a higher percentage of residents with bachelor's degrees, or higher, approximately 38%, compared to the South, which stands at around 30%. With these statistics in mind, and the geographic proximity of these states, there's the potential of a Northeast Republic, which could consist of states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. This nation could become another progressive entity, maintaining a robust financial sector and freedom of religion, given the vast diversity in the region. New York alone has a GDP of about $2 trillion, and the combined GDP of the Northeast could reach approximately $2.5 trillion. If we travel south, we'd see a region of social cohesion around the ideals of Christian values. According to a Pew Research Center survey, about 43% of adults in the South report attending religious services at least once a week, compared to about 29% in other regions of the US. The southern US also has a high concentration of evangelical Christians. Approximately 36% of southern adults identify as evangelicals, compared to 24% in the Midwest and 18% in the Northeast. With these cultural similarities in mind, there's the potential of a Bible Belt nation, which could include Texas, Florida, Mississippi, and other southern states. which might unite as a conservative nation emphasizing traditional values, including a vehement pro-life agenda and the possibility of a national religion. A state-sponsored religion in the Bible Belt could have several distinct characteristics. Here's an overview of what that might look like. The religion would likely be based on a specific branch of Christianity, such as evangelical Protestantism or Southern Baptist, given the prevalence of these sects in the region. Doctrines might emphasize traditional Christian values, possibly focusing on salvation, community service, and moral living according to biblical teachings. State institutions might adopt Christian symbols, prayers, and references in official documents and public schools. Laws could reflect Christian moral teachings, influencing areas such as education and healthcare. Public schools might incorporate biblical teachings and Christian ethics into their curricula, potentially teaching creationism instead of evolution. Laws might be influenced by Christian moral principles, affecting issues like abortion, marriage, and LGBTQ rights. Public spaces may feature Christian symbols such as crosses or biblical quotes, and regular public prayer might be encouraged. While this state-sponsored religion might foster community cohesion, it could also lead to significant tensions regarding religious freedom and diversity given the significant portion of non-Christians in the region. Now, for the economics, Texas has a GDP exceeding $2 trillion. Mining, quarrying, oil, and gas extraction added $170.97 billion to Texas's GDP, and Florida's GDP is about $1.2 trillion, bringing the combined GDP of the Bible Belt to at least $3.5 trillion. However, the Bible Belt faces challenges, with states like Mississippi having a poverty rate of over 19%, but we'll touch on that bit more in a second. Now, let's travel west and see what similarities and economic considerations might inform the creation of a Midwest nation. According to the USDA, Michigan's agricultural sector generated about $5.7 billion in cash receipts, while Ohio's was approximately $4.1 billion. The Midwest Republic could include states like Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan, and they could be an agricultural powerhouse. However, they may face challenges attracting skilled workers and diversifying their economy. The Midwest's GDP might total around $1.5 trillion, driven by agriculture and manufacturing. But poverty rates in states like Michigan, which are around 14%, and Ohio, with a poverty rate of 13%, might present hurdles for the nation. If we travel further west, we'll find that states like Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado would constitute a coal and natural gas powerhouse. In 2020, Wyoming produced over 60 million tons of coal, making it the largest coal producer in the US. Additionally, Wyoming and Utah have both enacted policies favouring limited government and individual freedoms, such as gun rights and tax policies. For instance, Wyoming has no state income tax, reflecting a libertarian preference for lower taxation. This mountain republic could emerge as a libertarian-leaning nation focused on individual freedoms and natural resource production. Also, a quick aside, if you feel like our content is providing you with some value, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like this video. It helps us immensely. Thank you for indulging us. Now, back to the stuff you came here for. One significant challenge that would arise in the event of a national divorce would be dividing USA's national debt, which currently exceeds $30 trillion US. This process would be contentious and complicated, but it's likely that the Bible Belt nation would be forced to take on a large portion of the debt, as the Northeast and West Coast have historically been net contributors, whereas states like Mississippi and Alabama have been net recipients. A net recipient state is one that receives more federal funding than it pays in federal taxes. This means that the federal government provides more financial resources to the state, often for programs like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. In contrast, a net contributor state pays more in federal taxes than it receives in federal funding. These states effectively contribute to the federal budget more than they take back, often funding programs and services in other states. Present-day Mississippi is often cited as one of the most significant net recipients of federal funding in the United States. According to recent statistics from the US Census Bureau in 2021, Mississippi received approximately $13.6 billion in federal funds, which translates to about $4,500 per person. This supports various sectors, including healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Mississippi also contributes relatively little in federal taxes, estimated at around $9 billion in 2021. This results in a stark disparity, with Mississippi taking in nearly $1.51 for every dollar it sends to the federal government. In contrast, California, the most populous state and a major economic powerhouse, is a net contributor. In 2021, California contributed approximately $470 billion in federal taxes, making it the largest contributor in the nation. However, it received about $400 billion in federal funding, leading to a net contribution of around $70 billion. This means California sends nearly $1.17 to the federal government for every dollar it receives. The reliance on federal funds in Mississippi allows for essential services that might otherwise go unfunded. Given this disparity, not only would a Bible Belt nation likely be saddled with a large portion of the national debt in the event of a US national divorce, but they may also have a hard time paying for the social programs that their citizens depend on. The financial interplay between states like Mississippi and California highlights stark contrasts in economic health and federal dependency. Understanding these dynamics can provide valuable insights into how a post-Civil War 2.0 America might look. Now, let's look at the potential global ramifications of a US divorce. The fragmentation of the US would send shockwaves through global geopolitics, creating a power vacuum that other nations might exploit. Since World War II, the US has positioned itself as the keeper of our current world order. But if the US were to split, how might this world order be upended? Well, China, as an economic powerhouse, could expand its Belt and Road Initiative, while Russia might seek to re-establish influence over former Soviet territory, which is already starting to occur in present-day Ukraine. International organisations like NATO, which have successfully held the status quo of the post-World War II world order, would struggle without US military support. And the status of the dollar as the world's reserve currency could be jeopardised, leading to increased economic instability. The US split would significantly disrupt global trade, forcing international markets to adapt to multiple American entities instead of a single economic superpower. Efforts to tackle transnational challenges like climate change could lose momentum without unified US leadership. The dissolution of the United States would deeply affect daily life. Families could be divided by new borders, straining relationships, and leading to increased migration as individuals seek to reunite with loved ones. Education systems would likely diverge, reflecting the ideologies of each new nation. Healthcare disparities could widen, with some nations adopting universal coverage, while others opt for privatized systems, potentially leading to medical tourism. Social services would transform as each new nation establishes its own welfare systems. The emergence of minority groups within these new nations could lead to fresh civil rights movements as individuals seek representation and equality. For example, would the non-Christian population in the Bible Belt nation rise up in defiance of state-sponsored Christianity in public schools? Would border walls be constructed to keep residents from the poorer neighbouring nations out? The potential ramifications are far-reaching and profound. To prevent the fragmentation of the United States, addressing the root causes of political polarization is crucial. Potential solutions include investing in education to enhance critical thinking and media literacy in the digital age, and fostering platforms for constructive dialogue rather than outrage-driven monetization. Ultimately, the stakes of political polarization extend beyond partisan conflicts. The stability of American society and our current world order depend on bridging these divides.